We're rolling video and 3, 2, 1. And we're live with Mike Recine. How you doing, buddy?
I'm good. How are you guys?
We're hanging in there.
I'm great.
Yeah.
Nice to have you on the show, Mike.
Thanks for having me. I love history, and my wife does not. So it's nice.
It's nice to talk with gentlemen about a gentlemanly topic.
Yeah.
I before when I first started this podcast, followers of mine will remember that Mike was on my last podcast. But before we even started this, I had the intention of having you on the show to talk about this topic because I thought it's a perfect Italian topic to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, I hadn't looked into it really at all. I had a complete misconception about. By the way, the topic obviously is the trial and execution of Sacco and Vanzetti, and I had a complete misconception of what the story was about. I thought I was under the impression that they were red-handed guilty, and that they were just a bunch of commies who got what was coming to them or something.
Well, yeah, my only familiarity with it before was Scott mentioning that he wanted to do it as a topic and summarizing it, and then obviously as soon as we researched it, I realized that Scott didn't know what he was talking about.
No, I was completely wrong.
Well, public school kind of made it sound that way.
I never was taught about this, but this is the craziest thing: is that Sacco actually lived in my town that I grew up in at the time of the robbery and his arrest, and But during my entire school career, they didn't bring the story up once.
Really?
Yeah, I think it's kind of looked at as like a dirty secret of Massachusetts history. So, it's like one of those things they kind of want to gloss over.
Yeah. I had a "that's my town" moment today. Somebody brought up Megan's Law, and that girl who was murdered was from my hometown. Yeah.
Oh,
sweet. Shout out.
Yeah.
and we mustn't forget about the Coles Law too.
Oh, what's that?
Don't take him to Newcastle. Oh.
Sorry. Hey, you do fucking old man jokes all the time. You got to give me mine. That's one of my trademark old man jokes. I'm sorry. Fuck. Anyway, so Sacco and Vanzetti. In this when I was researching this, I was shocked at all the places that were brought up in it that I'd been and are frequently at. The place where well, hang on. Let's backpedal a second. Let's actually set the stage for what was going on at the time. So in the wake of actually not even prior to that, this was a time where like political landscape was kind of changing before the World War I. The political landscape was changing. It was like this was at the beginning of the time when there was like labor movements and stuff, and people started getting interested in there was like a general strike at one point, which led to stuff like the 8-hour work week and stuff, 8-hour work day and stuff like that.
That shit was happening all over the world as well, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, but this is the time period where it was happening, though. Yeah, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, it happened in England as well.
It's funny to think about that because I wonder if people were consuming media as much as they were now. Because right now everybody is like on their phone, and there's so many outlets of right-wing propaganda. But I wonder if there was as much back then, and how those people
I would say,
kept
I think there was an abundance of all kinds of propaganda because like that whole that was the same time period like that Upton Sinclair guy became like a best-selling author. He later he made a unsuccessful run for governor of California, where he was under the Socialist Party and stuff like that. But he was like what was considered the left-wing media at the time, which was called yellow journalism, I guess.
Mm-hmm. And there was like an explosion in working class literacy as well, and a lot of pamphleteers and whatnot. But I mean, this whole thing of fake news. People were just printing whatever the fuck they wanted, and regardless of its truth, as is their right, and distributing it in the coffee houses and drinking holes and what have you. Because it was before. I mean, probably if you think about it, study this exact period really makes you realize how quickly things have kind of almost come full circle and gone right back off the rails again. Like, you've basically, you're talking about the period leading up to 1920. It's now 2021, and so in 100 years, you've gone from the final death of the democracy, of the sort of monarchies and the established powers, and this big labor movement, and then the consumerism of the mid 20th century, 2 world wars, and then sort of a kind of a general, people take sort of liberal democracy as for granted, but it's pretty much already gone, and it hadn't even really been thought of at this stage. It was sort of, there's 100 years, everything's come and gone real fast.
Yeah. When were things on the rails?
I don't know. I don't know, but it's kind of, been shooting for the rails, I guess, and then just missed it. Yeah. But yeah, I take your point. It's always, but it's, I mean, I was born in 1970, and it just, you know, I guess the time you grow up, you think things were always like that. And it was, that was a period of strife as well in England. You know, we had power cuts all the time. Everybody was always on strike and whatnot. But then, I don't know, it's like it, but I mean, people have been becoming more prosperous over that time. I guess I mean, that's undeniable, isn't it? We're better off than Sacco and Vanzetti were.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Probably, yeah.
Standard of living.
Yeah. But anyway, so and also this also was back in this up kind of new idea, this idea of a class consciousness based politics in America was largely egged on by the fact that there was a massive wave of new immigrants arriving in America, including Sacco and Vanzetti, and also the dudes who were kind of their thought leaders, which were the Gallianists.
Yeah. I think that's actually, if you can look at sort of modern version of this, if you say these guys who were emigrating from Europe at that time, I mean, for instance, Galliani was on the run from the Italian authorities, and
I think he was involved in the OG mob, Italian mob.
Well, he was an anarchist over there, all over. He'd lived in France and Switzerland and been thrown out of everywhere he'd been. And he was living as Italian. He was exiled to some island near Sicily, and escaped from there to Egypt, and then he gave the Egyptians the slip when they told him they were going to deport him back to Italy. Then it went to,
he's like Italiano Jones.
Yeah. So he was basically on the run, but so like a lot of so basically America. Yeah, you see this story playing out that a lot of these agitator type figures ended up in America, the same way that their contemporaries end up on Gab today in the social media world. It's like it was because it was open to anybody, more or less. It got all the people who got thrown out of other places first.
Right. And they were responsible for a number of anarchist attacks. Most of them they only killed themselves, but they kind of advocated for this idea called propaganda of the deed, which is the idea that it's kind of like the idea of like it's like accelerationism. Like let's make things fucked up, and maybe out of the chaos that we're creating from all these bombings and the mass fear of more bombings, like perhaps we can get some sort of social cohesion to overthrow the ruling class and the capitalists. And they were apparently, here's a little anecdote. A chef in Chicago who was allied with the Galliani, is that what it's Galliani? There was a banquet to honor Archbishop Mundelein, and he put arsenic in the soup of all of them, but he used way too much, and someone tasted it and was like, "What the? Somebody poisoned this." So nobody died. So there's a lot of that kind of Keystone Cops, slapsticky attempts at, and then sometimes they got, some pretty fucking, they killed a couple people.
Yeah, I mean, it was a big bombing campaign.
Yeah,
and there was one letter bomb campaign that they did, wasn't there? Where I think 2 or 3 of them got to the address.
J.P. Morgan's maid got her arms blown off.
Yeah, and
just her arms, or both arms?
Both arms. Yeah. I mean, what a fucking dumb. Did you really think J.P. Morgan was going to go grab the letter opener and go, "Oh, what did I get in this mail?"
Right.
But I mean, the thing with that campaign, they sent out, I think 20, and 16 of them got intercepted by the what do you call it, the postal service, and
they were ticking
because they had insufficient postage on them.
Oh, nice.
It'd be an early operation of the Mossad.
Yeah, got to scrimp and save where you can on the fucking the penny stamps. But another thing that they did was
like Wile E. Coyote almost. Yeah. The bomb gets returned to sender, and then you're like, "What's this?"
They painted a big tunnel on the wall next to John Rockefeller's house.
Yeah. I think what's again, not necessarily in the bombing. I don't know how terrorists operate. I think normally they just do whatever the FBI tells them to do. But they, the whole in these, they didn't have the FBI in those days, did they? So they had
but interesting you bring that up. Finally, one of the big deal, and by the way, this is so telling of what the federal government is that after there was a number of bombings, as I said before, attempts on capitalist lives, and then finally they struck at what's his name? He was the Attorney General of the United States. What the fuck is it?
I forget his name. Palmer,
yes, Palmer. And they blew up the whole front of his house, but nobody got hurt. Of course, being a federal government guy goes, "Oh, well, we got to deal with this now." So he put his best guy on it, who is none other than one J. Edgar Hoover.
Yeah.
And J. Edgar Hoover organized something called the Palmer Raids, in which they went around and anyone who was like even vaguely suspected of having ties of anarchism was rounded up and deported. Some of them who were, Americans or a lot of them got deported to Russia because again, this was after the USSR had been established. The
original, if you like Russia so much, why don't you go live there?
Yeah. What's it called? No, they ended up like rounding up a shitload of Italians just because, oh, he must be up to something. He's swarthy.
Somebody did get hurt in that Palmer bombing because it was.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the guy who was planting the bomb.
That's right. Yeah, he blew himself up.
They reckon he tripped over it. Which is awesome.
Good one.
Yeah. But and there was a sort of among the, I think it was like a decentralized bombing campaign. So what happened?
Yeah.
Galliani had this pamphlet or newsletter, whatever you want to call it. And he printed in that bomb.
It's called something very crypto Jewish. It's called like Chronicaro Subversia.
Yeah.
Or something.
And he basically published bomb making instructions and said that you should bomb the government.
Yeah,
which
it was only in Italian too.
I obviously this is being recorded and available, so I'm not going to endorse bombing the government right now because that's wrong. But that's what he did, and so I think a lot of people just kind of, people who were on board with the philosophy and this idea of the propaganda of the deed, which is the central idea of it really, which was that if you start bombing the institutions that are oppressing the workers, it'll encourage the workers to see that they're not invulnerable, you know, and that they can have a revolution.
Yeah, definitely. What was I just gonna say? Yeah. So what happened was, though, they traced the pamphlets. First of all, that specifically that Palmer bombing, they had this pamphlet called Plain Words. In here, let me just read from this a little bit. The powers that be will make no secret of their will to stop. Here in America, the worldwide spread of revolution. The powers that be must reckon that they will have to accept the fight that they have provoked.
Yep.
And it goes on, and it talks about.
Well, they were basically saying, "Look, you guys started this shit, and we're not afraid to finish it."
Yeah, based.
Yeah, it's a good point.
Wait, what is based? I hear it all the time, and I remember I looked it up once.
It's the opposite of cringe.
It's the opposite of cringe. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the easiest way to say it.
Yeah.
It's from Lil B.
I'm definitely against suicide bombing, but it is kind of cool to be like, I hate you so much, I'll kill myself.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Although they didn't voluntarily commit suicide bombing. It was when they blew themselves up. It was just. I mean, a couple of guys they're all Italians. A couple of them just blew their hands off, which made them mute from that point on. They could no longer communicate.
Right.
What was that guy's name that you said was funny?
They couldn't finger their mothers anymore.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. In 1916, a guy, a Gallianisti, got arrested for stabbing a policeman, and his name. He gloried in the name Alfonso Fagotti.
Really?
Yeah.
Nice.
So, I mean, you know,
why is everybody always making fun of me? I'm just gonna stab a police officer.
Yeah. I'll show everybody I'm not a fucking pussy.
We'll see who's the Fagotti now.
So another thing with the history of this sort of I mean, this is post World War I, isn't it? Where the world's got more brutal.
Yeah.
But kind of, although these deportations obviously pretty inhumane, but generally speaking, when you say about so and so got sent to jail for this, and like this guy Galliani, the main guy, he was in trouble in Italy, France, Switzerland, England, Egypt, and the United States. He ended up getting deported from the United States to Italy, where he was allowed to live. And Mussolini charged him with sedition in Italy. He got 14 months in jail. It's like, it's a different age it's pre-prison industrial complex.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
No more mandatory minimums. Yeah. Or no mandatory minimums yet, I should say.
Yeah. I mean, that's Mussolini, the strong man.
Yeah.
I'll show him.
I'll throw him in for a long year and a quarter.
Yeah.
And 10 months for good behavior.
Yeah.
Fuck. Yeah. So I guess now's the time to introduce our two heroes, Sacco and Vanzetti.
Can you imagine jail in Italy, though? It's probably pretty funny.
Yeah.
You're probably served food and allowed to play bocce or whatever.
Yeah, they cut the garlic real thin with a razor blade, so
it melts in the gravy.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, what's
There's some fat guy with his trousers pulled up real high.
Fuck. But yeah, Sacco and Vanzetti met. They actually met in Mexico, weirdly, because Galliani and a bunch of other people. They during World War I, in order to dodge the draft, they actually all went to Mexico and lived communally, failing miserably because they're a bunch of Italians trying to be farmers, and they ended up having to go back to America, obviously. during the majority of World War One, they were during the time at least that America was in, which is only the last 2 years, they were gonzo. So
the bombing stopped in 17 when they all fucked off to Mexico.
Yeah,
and then Q 1919.
Yeah,
when our story starts, isn't it?
Yep. And when they came back, Sacco was working at the time of all this happening. Sacco again was living in my hometown of Stoughton, Massachusetts. His house is still standing. I'm debating going over there to check it out, but I think it's someone's house, obviously. And the shoe factory he worked in also is still there, and it's a Remax office.
I think you should go and lay a wreath at the house.
Yeah, maybe.
Grow your beard a bit longer first, and then.
Yeah. So and he was working there at the shoe factory, and then what's his name? Vanzetti, Bartolomeo Vanzetti lived in Plymouth, which at the time was weirdly Italian, I guess. It's not now. It's kind of rich people now, I would say. I went to my.
Well, that's what happens. There. We make things beautiful, and then rich people come in.
Yeah, wasps show up and fuck it all up. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I guess that would be at the time Italians were black, so I guess it would be kind of like gentrification, you know.
Hey, we're still black.
It's still real to me, damn it.
Yeah.
What's it called though?
I mean, you could. I mean, this is why you can say, "Oh, how come are Italians particularly inclined towards anarchism?" Well, I don't know. Maybe they are. Maybe they're not. But they were the group that were kind of in the ideal position to feel that way, I guess, at the time.
Yeah, they're white N-words.
Yeah.
Then, you know.
That concludes another episode of show.
Oh, you think that's bad? Just wait, buddy. So they were living there, so I guess we should start by talking about the Bridgewater attempted robbery, where there was an armored car with a day's payroll headed to the LQ Smith, I believe is the name of the shoe factory. And a car full of dudes who had unloaded and stood by the side of the road, attempted to stop a armored car, and one of them fired off a shotgun. This startled the driver, who drove into a tree. And all of the four bandits fucked off. You can understand, this is like a few years after fucking Red Dead Redemption. Yeah. Like, this was still like fucking, like, you could still get away with, you could just change your name and move a couple towns over and get away with something
right.
Like this.
You just change your hat and your meter goes down.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, if you look at it, the was it Vanzetti who was, I mean, basically a lot of people.
Oh, this was on Christmas Eve, by the way.
And eyewitnesses came forward and said it definitely wasn't Vanzetti because he had the wrong kind of mustache.
That was part of it. Yeah, we'll get to that part later. But apparently the guy had a short clip mustache. I'm not saying it was a Hitler mustache, but I'm not ruling it out either.
Yeah. But it was a Charlie Chaplin mustache in those days.
Yes, I guess it was. Yeah.
But Hitler didn't make it cool yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Hey, no one else had it after him.
Yeah.
Yeah, they retired the number.
He hung up his jack boots, and then that was it for that. So that was Christmas Eve, and then so they bugged off. They knew that this was not a fucking good move. They'd probably get caught, and there was an investigation into it. And the Pinkertons actually got involved. And their assessment was that I believe, how did they connect? They connected it somehow to some guy in Brighton, Massachusetts, who was an anarchist, and he somehow tricked them into thinking, what were you going to say, William?
He was like a bookmaker or something, wasn't he?
Yeah, I think he had some kind of mob ties.
Yeah. And basically he framed that guy sort of framed Sacco and Vanzetti for it. I mean,
that Mario Buddha guy too.
Yeah, I guess nobody knows, but it looks like it was him, and it was basically, the narrative became that Sacco and Vanzetti were robbing people to get money to finance the anarchist activities.
Right.
But another plausible narrative is that it was basically just mob activity.
Right.
So we can blame these other dumb ginzos who aren't.
Yeah, here we go.
Part of us, yeah.
Oh fuck. Anyway, though, so they basically the local investigators for Bridgewater. This is also a place where there's 4 cops.
Yeah.
It's worth mentioning, and it's even now. I go down there all the time because my dad lives in that area, and it's like as much as Massachusetts can be redneck, this is it.
Right.
It's all dudes on Harleys. It's fucking all that kind of shit. So it makes sense that there would only be 4 cops, but they got it in their head basically that it was a local group of anarchists who lived in a communal house, which they were vaguely aware of due to the fact that there was recently had been a guy who had been purged from the country under the Palmer raids. His last known location was in Bridgewater in a communal kind of flop house deal.
Yeah.
With a bunch of other Italian people. So they were aware of this. Now, some time goes by and the fateful South Braintree Moral Shoe Company robbery takes place, which was in broad daylight at 3 p.m. And it's interesting because this was they had protocols in place to ensure that this would be a very hard thing to rob, because they would change the day that the money for the pay would come in each week in order to keep potential hijackers off of the scent. So this would kind of indicate that the people who pulled this off were professional criminals, not just 2 fucking Italian anarchists. So that's worth noting before we start here. But yeah, so basically these 2 guys, a paymaster and a security guard, walked from the train station over to where the factory was. And there were a bunch of people kind of lounging around in the street. And that was not normal for the area, because it was just an industrial area and this was working hours, not a break. So there being people around just fucking around smoking a cigarette was like really out of place. So the 2 guys were like really on edge. And lo and behold, one of them walks up to them and starts just fucking shooting both of them.
Yeah.
He shoots the guy with the money first, and then shoots the security guard 4 times, and kills him, and then goes back and executes the guy who he took the money from in the first place. Jumps in a car, and this, by the way, this is in broad daylight. There's a ton of fucking eyewitnesses, because as soon as the sound of gunshots go out, people run outside of the factory. I mean, what would you do? This is fucking 1920. Like, not this, something this exciting doesn't happen every day.
Yeah, they haven't even made the Brady Bunch yet.
Yeah. So they speed off in a I think it's a Buick. It was a Buick, right?
Yeah, yeah, I guess so.
I mean, there were only 3 or 4 cars at the time, so I mean,
it was a fucking grisly crime.
Yeah, it's kind of a sloppy. Don't they try to avoid this kind of shit? They don't do this in the movies.
Yeah,
just
I mean,
plug 2 guys and take the money. Can't they try to at least get them to give it up?
They took the security guard's handgun as well, I believe.
Well, that was alleged, and that turned out to be hogwash. But we'll get to that when we get to the fucking the trial. So it ended up being that the car was dumped in this place called Hollywoods, which is right on the border of Brockton, which is the town I'm originally from, and West Bridgewater. Actually, you want to know something? Gabe's house is in the exact fucking spot where the car got dumped.
Right.
Sorry, the listeners of the show will know Gabe. Actually, you met Gabe, Mike, when you came to my house.
Nice.
But yeah, is right there, and this made it party to the aforementioned 4-man Bridgewater police station precinct, and they picked up the investigation, or at least cooperated in the investigation.
Yeah, because it was like these cross jurisdictional, even though it was all pretty local.
It's literally maybe 10 miles.
Yeah, so the only investigators who had the capacity to draw these two crimes together and investigate it was the Pinkertons, because the local law enforcement just didn't really cooperate with each other at all, did they?
Yeah. Yeah, so the plan that the Bridgewater police took was to investigate that house, the communal house where that guy had been deported from, because he had still had it in his head that this was all the work of one gang of anarchists. This is basically just Italian American and discrimination at its best.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're used to it.
It's like, well, this is the thing when people sort of clamor for harsher sentences for really serious crimes, like, I don't know, even pedophilia or whatever, is that when something really...
Pedo apologia incoming.
No. Whenever some really egregious crime happens, which I guess this is...
double murder, I'd say it's kind of serious.
Yeah, and it's not like it's against... I mean, to me, if it was if they'd have got the Attorney General, that's a different kettle of fish. It's just a guy trying to do his job. It's a bit, it's egregious, isn't it? It's basically to the man in the street. You think, so that could have been me,
Yeah.
And, so there's obviously the public are probably pretty pissed off about it, and it puts pressure on the police to get somebody, and they don't give a fuck whether they get the right guy or the wrong guy. And if you have harsher sentences for more serious crimes, you end up with worse miscarriages of justice when they happen, because the police are in a position where we've got to get somebody for this.
Right. Yeah.
It doesn't make any difference.
That's definitely a big aspect of what happened here, is that they didn't want to do the due diligence and figure out what this could be. They saw this as an easy out to get some people that were unpopular, ostensibly unpopular. Like, I don't know, like Massachusetts is known as being a pretty liberal place, but like it's low key racist at times. I'm not gonna lie. It is pretty segregated, and there's definitely a lot of anti-immigrant sentiment going on at the time. So it would be easy for some local 4-cop police chief to want to wash his hands of it by getting some quote unquote undesirables out of the neighborhood.
Yeah.
So what they did was they went to that house where the guy had been deported, asked about him. And there was a guy there who was going by the name Mike Budo, but was actually a Gallianista. Is that what you should call him?
I think that
Gallianista.
I don't know. Gallianist, I guess.
Gallianist, fine. That works.
Yeah.
He was a avowed bomb maker. And he was living there, and he said, yeah, I know the guy that got deported. He was a really bad guy. I think he was getting into some crimes. Yeah. And they were like, oh, okay, really? If you see anything else, oh yeah, by the way, they also frisked him, and he by the way, search and seizure, it's fucking illegal search and seizure, but they frisked him, and he was in possession of a pistol, and they said, hey buddy, what are you doing with this? Not that it was illegal, but it's suspicious. The guy's a fucking immigrant, and he lives in a house where they had full rights under the draconian fucking laws that were going on at the time to ask him that question. And he said, hey, I sell macaroni, no bullshit. And, it's a dangerous trade. So I have to have a gun to protect myself. And they said, okay, fair enough. And the police chief went home and said, wait a minute. So they went back the next day, and he fucked the fuck off. He knew better than to stick around. So good on him for that, I guess. But so a few days later, the police chief gets a phone call from a local auto mechanic who said, hey, this fucking Mike Budo guy, real name Mario Buda, by the way, he left his car at my auto shop. I fixed it, and he hasn't come to pick it up. It's been months. And the police chief says, okay, keep it there. Don't sell it. And if anybody comes in, you let me know. And some time goes by, and lo and behold, Mike Budo and another unnamed associate on a motorcycle pulled up with two guys on foot who are none other than Nicola Sacco and Bartolomeo Vanzetti.
Right.
And they go to pick up, I guess what they must have been doing some kind of secret anarchist mission. I don't know what that was, but they were certainly up to something, probably distributing pamphlets or some other such coffee shop type activity. But regardless, they were there to get the car. And the mechanic did a very poor job of keeping them there until the cops came, and they got wise and took the fuck off. Sacco and Vanzetti, they didn't come on a motorcycle. They came on the trolley car that had come from Brockton, Massachusetts, and they got on it. And the police got there and radioed ahead to Brockton, where they were intercepted at the terminus of the line and arrested.
Yeah, and that they were found to be armed as well, weren't they? I believe.
Right. And they were not forthcoming with their weapons. And they also lied about knowing Budo. They basically they looked shifty, basically. So they were arrested on suspicion of involvement in that fucking robbery, which makes no sense if you think about it, even on paper.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically just, we suspect. It's finding some people who fit your hypothesis, isn't it? Rather than
right. He was black, so I pick up a black guy. First black guy I see.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just funny because Italians today will be like, oh, they discriminated against us too. We had it bad like everybody else.
Yeah, for being commies.
Right, for being you're right. It was for being communists or anarchists or being like part of left-wing activist groups, but that's just like I think that's just a talking point for them because none of them would know, really know anything about Sacco and Vanzetti or any of this kind of any anti-immigrant sentiment or what it was.
Who
really
are we
about.
talking specifically about here? Boomers, which anything they say in general you can just throw out anyway.
Yeah.
But yes, it is a big Italian boomer. Yeah,
right. It's a big Italian boomer thing, and they love bringing that up as like a talking point.
Yeah,
but they don't know.
It was a big theme in The Sopranos, wasn't it? That whole idea.
Yeah,
I'm against this intergenerational warfare sort of
are you
propaganda? Yeah, because
but you're Gen X, right?
Yeah. So
well,
I mean, it depends whether you go biologically or just by when I was born, because if you actually strictly speak in generations, I probably am a boomer because my dad was born in 1907. So,
really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So I'm a kind of a late in life baby.
Mm-hmm.
But I just think it's another way of dividing people up to lord it over them.
You're not wrong, but boomers just they're so insufferable while being what they are. It's hard not to just get down on them. Like literally, they had the greatest economy in human history. You just handed to them on a silver platter, and they have the balls to be like, oh, kids these days, I can't fucking believe it. My son, he's a fucking piece of shit. Points to whoever emails me with what that's from. But so anyway, they're in custody. It's a bunch of horse shit. obviously. They're guilty of nothing but being greasy Italian anarchists.
Yeah. I mean, like, was it Sacco who was a fishmonger?
No, that was Vanzetti. Oh yeah, that's interesting because so they charged him only with both of the robberies, and he actually had numerous alibis. Because Mike, you'll appreciate this. It was in fact Christmas Eve on the time of the Bridgewater robbery, and he had the entire Italian community of Plymouth to verify that he was selling them eels for the 7 fishes.
Yeah,
nice. Sacco.
Yeah. So, no, Vanzetti.
Oh,
the incel one.
Oh, okay. I thought Vanzetti didn't have an alibi.
No, he didn't have no. He had an alibi technically for both of them. Okay. Sacco didn't have one for he didn't have a punch card at his job. He had a punch card on his job for the Bridgewater one, so he could verify that he was there. And for the one for the shoe factory robbery, he actually didn't go to work that day, so it did raise suspicions. But he had a number of he had gone to the Italian consulate that day to get a new passport because he was planning on going to visit his dad who was dying in Italy. Yeah. And he was memorable to the people who worked there because he brought a portrait of his family that was like 12 feet by 12 inches by 15 inches as his photo, and they all laughed at him. So they were all they were all able to definitely identify that he had been there that day. There's no way he was at the fucking shoe factory shooting those guys.
Right.
But all those people barely spoke English, and it was this is another thing. The jury selection was insane. They specifically picked like the most fucking Boston, fuck these fucking immigrants, kid. Yeah. Guys. And the head juror was quoted during the trial as saying, I don't care if they're guilty or not. Hang the bastards. Yeah.
Can you imagine the guys in the Italian embassy? Like, how long do you think they strung him along about that? You know about this, mate, about how the sort of, Italian guys taking the piss out of each other. That kind of, that's, say, hey, check out this mook fucking coming in here with a giant photograph. Oh, yeah, just come in here. We'll just go get the fucking sellotape.
Shit. So another thing was there was the International Workers of the World, the IWW, may be familiar with the organization. They assigned a lawyer who was a big shot from California, named something Moore. I want to say Fred Moore. Yeah, Fred Moore. And he was kind of like a 1920s hippie. If you can kind of get what I mean by that. He had like kind of long hair for the time. Like he wore sandals in the courtroom and shit. Yeah, totally. Nice.
It's only cool if he had socks on as well, though.
Oh yeah, and his suit was corduroy and had leather arm patches on it.
Yeah. I'm a big advocate of socks with sandals.
Why do you say these things on the show?
Well, I'm passionately in favor of wearing socks with sandals. It's very
You're passionately a faggot.
True.
It is good for taking your dog out, when it's cold, just slipping your flip-flops on. Yeah. I will say for that. But that's why'd you
get some fucking loafers like a man?
Because the flip-flops, you can just kick your feet right into them. You don't have to use your finger or anything. I can't really bend over anymore.
Yeah. Okay.
Too tight. The flip-flops, you just kick them right on.
Yeah. I actually don't even wear sandals on the beach. I think they're so gay that I refuse to wear them at any point ever. And I will not wear anything that does not like mostly cover my feet.
Mike, this is just all denial it's all part of his denial of our Lord and Savior. He won't even wear the same footwear as the guy.
Right. Well, I mean, I don't really, my people and him don't really get along.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. You're basically some kind of, you know,
I'm playing out some sort of I'm playing out some
the
sort of
Christian
like
community.
intergenerational trauma by refusing to wear the footwear of the one true Lord and Savior.
Yes.
And this is my way of lashing out at my resentment for the years and years of blood libel on my people.
To be honest, you might as well have crucified him yourself.
Well, maybe I'll put some sandals on and I'll get wipe my slate clean.
Yeah, please do.
Anyway, what's it called though? So another thing was, so they didn't even take, as I said before, they didn't even take any of the fucking the alibi seriously, and for some fucking reason they were able to convict Vanzetti solely on the charge of what was it called? Consciousness of guilt, which was apparently an amazing legal strategy at the time because it worked really well on retarded fucking jurors.
Yeah, it was the consciousness of guilt was really a concept that that he lied when he was first interrogated. So that means, you must have done something wrong, or you wouldn't.
Yeah, have lied. You wouldn't have lied if you wouldn't have anything to hide if you weren't doing anything wrong.
Yeah,
Guinea.
So don't talk to the cops was as true then as it is now.
Yeah, well, it'll never stop being true. Don't talk to the media either. Yeah. But what's it called? So yeah, they convict him on that, and this is also pivotal because they were able to use the fact that he was technically a felon for the Bridgewater robbery as part of their case, which is insane that they would be able to do that.
I mean, nothing. Plus Sean's. What's that Silk Road guy called? I forget his name. I should say his name. Really.
Yeah, what the fuck is his name?
But I mean, he was
that guy. Yeah,
he was sentenced for a crime that he wasn't even charged with.
Yeah,
they still do it. It's fucking sick.
And all he was trying to do was get organs and child pornography to the average person.
There's no evidence that was him.
Yeah.
Fuck.
But still, yeah, if you've done it, charge him with it. But he was in his sentencing remarks, the judge took into account things that weren't even on the docket, which is complete abuse of process.
Well, they were trying to make it.
Yeah.
I think in both cases they were trying to make a fucking example.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, that's what it is. It's like if you get involved, railroaded into some bullshit, you're fucked. And the law doesn't matter. Because the law only constrains the government to the extent that it wants it to. They can just ignore
it. Did seem like it was very convenient, to convict these guys.
Yeah.
So also another thing that they brought up was the ballistics, so they had a ballistics expert, and you can imagine in 1920 ballistics forensics was not a very precise art or science, as it were. On this should be a mistrial just for this, but the ballistics expert said on the stand that the bullet found, the final killing bullet that was found on the bodyguard was consistent with a bullet that would come from the pistol that was found on Sacco at his time of arrest.
Yeah.
Now, the fact that they had this Fred Moore cunt, it really fucked them because he was basically using the entire trial as a political talking point, and he wanted to make the entire trial about politics and didn't really give a fuck whether he got Sacco and Vanzetti off. In fact, there was a very widely publicized quote from the International Workers of the World who had financed his being their lawyer, where they said that Sacco and Vanzetti are actually more valuable to us dead than alive because it's more of a political talking point for them to be martyrs than for us to be able to actually win the case.
Well, we wouldn't be talking about them most likely, would we? That's
true. Maybe we would. Who knows? The dude lives in my town.
Yeah.
I might have gotten interested in it. So if he had been a good lawyer, he would have said, but was it definitively shot from the gun that was found on Sacco at the time of arrest? And the ballistics expert is said to have been prepared to have said, no, it's just the same type of gun.
Yeah.
But he didn't ask him because he's a shitty lawyer. And he wears sandals in the court. Sandals suck, case closed.
Case closed. But I mean, that shit goes on all the time. That's another timeless fucking way people get fucked over, isn't it?
But this was supposed to be some wunderkind lawyer.
Yeah. But I mean, you never really. This is another group of. But I mean, lawyers are always fucking their own clients over in criminal trials.
That's true.
Because
look at the very famous case of fucking oh god, I'm forgetting who the actor was. Cape Fear. I was gonna make it like I knew the character's names. Is Max Cady, the very famous Max Cady case of the 1990s, and that lawyer did not act in Robert De Niro's favor at all.
I can't remember that movie.
All right, no, sorry, I tried. Anyway, yeah, so they end up fucking not winning the case. And it was like a pretty quick deliberation because, as I said before, the jury was extremely biased racially, I guess, or whatever. They're prejudiced against the dudes.
Well, I mean, a lot juries are typically prejudiced against the defendant anyway.
Yeah,
because the average normie just thinks, well, if he hadn't done anything wrong, he wouldn't be standing in that.
Right.
box.
Well, that's pretty much basically what they ended up convicting them on, is that idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they spent, and also, by the way, it's worth mentioning that at the time, first-degree murder in Massachusetts was an automatic sentence of execution. So they were put on death row, and they spent a number of years because there was a number of appeals from their defense. And another fucked up Massachusetts law is that the way that appeals court works is that it goes back to the original judge that decided on the case the first time. In this case, it was a guy named Webster Thayer, all around cunt. And he had made a point in his career to go after anarchists and Italians. So I don't know why they thought that he was gonna just suddenly change his mind. In fact, there was a time, there was a newspaper article at the time where he was overheard at a Dartmouth University football game, which is his alma mater, where he was talking to the civics professor, head of civics at Dartmouth University, who said, he said to him, do you see how what I did to those anarchist bastards by repeatedly denying their appeal? So there's no way that this guy was going to change his mind. Also, interestingly, during Sacco's time at Dedham, at the Dedham jail, which is still there, by the way, he was approached by one Celestino Medeiros, a Portuguese fella. So, by the way, the sneaky Portuguese is actually the real villain of all this story, by the way.
Yep, tale as old as time.
Yep.
Italians getting blamed for stuff they didn't do.
He goes, he slips Sacco a note that says, dude, you know that thing you're on death row for? Yeah, that was me. And he kind of, he was already on death row for shooting a bank clerk in a failed robbery. Right. So I guess at that point, fuck it. Why not tell the truth? Right. And he indicated that he was working with, oh, fuck, hang on, it's right here. What's that guy's name? Oh, well, it doesn't matter. The Italian guy out of Providence, which everybody knows Providence is mobbed the fuck up. And they were had a successful string of crimes where they hijacked shoe shipments when they were coming into New Bedford, Massachusetts, which, by the way, is like Portuguese Central. So it makes perfect sense that a Portuguese guy would have been the guy who was doing this. And
the first robbery was a shoe factory robbery. Maybe they thought, maybe they got tired of having to fence all these fucking clogs.
Shoes. Thought, let's just get the money.
Yeah.
Right. And he also in emotion, you have to, in emotion of this kind of appeal, you have to show that there's some kind of insider knowledge of the crime in order to make it, work in the legal system. And he was able to say to the police that he was aware of car switch that occurred in Randolph, which was not public knowledge at the time. So it indicated that he was indeed part of the plot. But Webster Thayer, cunt that he was, said, fuck you, fuck these Italians. We're going through with the fucking the death sentence. Sorry, Charlie.
Yeah, there was a video that I watched that said that he was like a pretty respected judge, but they were like, he was a respected judge. He just didn't really care for immigrants.
Yeah.
He was a respected judge in the sense that he was a Boston Brahmin who his family tree could get traced back to the Mayflower. I think pretty much, this kind of soiled his name forever in a way. It was kind of a controversial thing because during the years leading up to their execution, like this was a worldwide movement of people who were, kind of not even just lean left, but anyone who kind of had a sort of sense of the idea of civil liberties was fuck this. Like, let's stop this. This is clearly a fucking miscarriage of justice that's happening. And Massachusetts likes to keep its fucking shit. They don't like to look like assholes. Just look at the whole busing thing. Yeah. So yeah, there was protests all as far as Buenos Aires, Dubai. They cared about Sacco and Vanzetti. That's crazy. South Africa, Australia, 3 places in Brazil, 3 places in Australia, and every major city in North America and Europe and Tokyo. So this was international.
Yeah, I mean, this whole thing of, I was listening, I can't remember who it was, but I was listening to a guy who made the point that when you have like the division of labor to the point where you have people who do nothing but be lawyers, then society's fucked. But like that, this sort of attitude of this judge could have been, even if like this complacency of you seeing the same thing over and over and over again, and it's your job to decide it, and like it's like kind of human nature. You think, I know what. As soon as I see the opening arguments of this case, I'm going to know how it's going to turn out. And it's just like, and then just sticking with that. It's kind of human nature. And it's fucked up that you have, a lot of power is vested in judges, but they are human, aren't they? And they have all those faults. So it doesn't even need to be there doesn't even really need to be a nefarious motive behind it. It's just like, if you, I don't know, whatever job you do, if you start doing it one day and you see something happen, you can recognize which way it's going to go, whether it's going to go good, whether it's going to go bad, or what the outcome's going to be. And those guys are bound to feel the same way, aren't they?
Yeah. C'est vrai. So at this point, there was a clemency request put to the governor of Massachusetts, Alan Fuller. And he decided, instead of, actually, I believe even to this day, the governor in the Constitution of Massachusetts, the governor doesn't get to just rule on these things. But he assigned a 3-man panel known as the Lowell Commission, who was headed, it was 3 people, one of which was a retired judge who had become a popular novelist, and then the president of MIT, and then the president of Harvard, all of which wore top hats on the regular.
Sweet.
And they decided that their determination was that the trial as presented to them in the public record was in fact a fair trial, and that there was no reason for any sort of recall of the results of the trial, and that sealed Sacco and Vanzetti's fate.
No need for any the trial was fair and the cigars were excellent. Thank you very much.
Yep. And so, let's see, when they die? August 23rd, 1927, in the wee hours, right after midnight. Now, this is the thing that I think is very funny, is that the first person executed that night was none other than Celestino Medeiros,
Right.
the guy who actually committed the robbery. Yeah.
Now, he had confessed to it, right?
Yeah. He was already under the fucking gun for shooting a bank teller. There was no reason for him to hide it.
Right.
And he was the first person executed. Then Sacco approached the chair. Oh, yeah, by the way, also the guy who pioneered the electric chair, I think the guy's name was Myers. I'm not sure, but he was the guy who manned it in Sing Sing. And he was actually sent all the way to Massachusetts to do this because it was such a high profile. They didn't want anybody fucking it up. So Sacco went up and he said, Viva Anarchia, long live anarchy. And also, as he died, he called out mother, all in Italian, by the way. And yep. And but it was noted that both Sacco and Vanzetti were both very dignified during the proceedings, because apparently Medeiros was like a blubbering mess.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So in comparison, they seem very stately, I guess. I
mean, imagine this kind of psychological torture of that whole Medeiros episode, because you can see like that those guys are probably, until Medeiros piped up and said, "Oh, I did it," you can see that it would be possible to have resigned yourself to it, and then to have what would even to the most cynical person in that position being told that some other guy had admitted to doing it. It'd be impossible not to get your hopes up a little bit.
Yeah.
And then to go through all that and end up crying for your mother. It's fucking horrible, isn't it?
Yeah. It's a bummer, man. And also, yes, Vanzetti, by the way, also had a kind of a reputation as an incel. But it turns out
Vanzetti did with that mustache.
I know, right? You'd think you'd be slaying pussy. I know.
Well, hey, I've got a hell of a mustache, and
it's all cock for you, baby.
I'm a gay incel.
Nice.
Well, I'm gay also.
Yeah. But yeah, no. So, but apparently, I was watching an interview with a woman who wrote like an all-comprehensive book on the topic, and she said that in her research, apparently I'm going to go check this out, I think, on some of my free time, but at the Boston Public Library, they have a lot of Sacco and Vanzetti stuff there, including like a huge amount of correspondence of theirs while they were in prison. And apparently he wrote a love letter to the lady who was tutoring him in English while he was in prison in invisible ink.
Wow. That's hot.
But I don't think he got pussy. So if he was, in fact, an incel.
That has got to be one of those, like a biological, like if you know you're about to be executed, there's got to be a very strong urge to
procreate,
dump your mess in a woman's, what.
But yeah, so he went up and in very good English, by the way. Everyone was really surprised at how well his English had progressed, probably because he wanted to fuck the tutor. Yeah. He said, I'm guilty of no crime. I have sinned, but I am guilty of no crime. And I'd like to forgive. He also went up and shook the warden's hand because apparently they became boys.
Yeah.
The warden was, and you'll find a lot of when we talked about fucking that James Earl Ray guy, like you'll find that a lot of times the state is like the fucking antagonist in the situation, and the prison guards will kind of like make friends with the prisoners sometimes.
Yeah, the prison guys like James Earl Ray, didn't they? That's
yes, they did.
MLK guy.
It's because they knew the truth is that the feds killed him. But anyway. Yeah, we digress. Listen to that episode if you want. But what's it called? So he went up and shook his hand. He said, "I want to thank you for all the kindness you've done to me." And apparently, by all accounts, the warden guy got all choked up and had to leave.
Really?
From that, yeah. And so he also said, I want to forgive some of the people who are doing this to me, because you don't know what you're doing. And without a word, put the fucking the hood on, and they put him out, and then that was it.
Electric chair, right?
Vanzetti. Yeah. The old bzz.
Why don't they do that anymore?
It's interesting that the way that they
CO2 emissions.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. It's too big of a footprint, carbon footprint. No, apparently it's cruel and unusual, and that makes sense. But when they say cruel and unusual, they mean for the witnesses.
Right.
That's what is defined with cruel and unusual. But they thought it was too violent to make a bunch of witnesses who have to sign affidavits afterwards to make them watch a guy's brains melt.
Nice.
Yeah. So that's why they switched to a bunch of different things. I still think, and this is a subject of debate, but I honestly think the most humane way to be executed is a firing squad.
It's definitely the coolest.
Yeah, I'll talk about it. With the cigarette hanging out of your mouth and just go and be like, all right, do me.
Yeah.
Pretty badass. And also another thing that's cool about, go ahead.
I think that's just going to be in my will, actually, that I get executed by firing squad.
That's pretty based.
Yeah.
It's I mean, this is a sort of a way out there position here, but I'm against the death penalty.
No, but you should be able to give it to yourself.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
You should be able to sentence.
There should be a service.
Sentence yourself to the death penalty.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you pay your fucking taxes.
Yeah.
Where's all
Might as well get at least.
It's there. It's there. We should be using it.
Yeah.
We should get to use the thing that we pay for, the lethal injection machine.
Anyway,
I guess hanging's kind of cool too.
Yeah, but it fucks up so much. That's the thing. That's why they stopped doing it. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Because a lot of times their neck would break, and then they'd be alive, and then it's like, what are we gonna do now? We gotta kill them some other way, and it ends up being like that scene in fucking Me, Myself, and Irene.
With the cow.
With the cow, yeah. It's like, well, they just keep trying different things, and he's still alive. Fuck.
Well, like Rasputin.
Yeah. I don't know that reference. What are you talking about?
Well, it took them ages to kill him, didn't it? They're like,
the Rasputin. Yeah, I guess.
Poisoned him, shot him.
Some of that was just for fun.
Yeah. Tied him up and threw him in the river in the freezing cold, and then the post-mortem, he drowned.
Nice. He's a fucking real man.
Yeah.
But anyway, so in retaliation for, actually, this is a little bit of a rewind. I forgot to mention this. In retaliation for the indictment of Sacco and Vanzetti, our old friend Mike Budo, aka Mario Buda, committed what goes down in history as the most deadly anarchist bombing or attack of all American history.
The Wall Street bombing.
The Wall Street bombing, yeah. And it was in direct retaliation for Sacco and Vanzetti, and 37 people died, none of which were capitalists. All of them were just people walking down the street. So good job, boys.
I mean, that's the problem with. I mean, I can sympathize with the aims of all this, but then again, I was going to say that sort of typical sympathize with the aims, but like. It's always like the black housemaid and the people just walking down the street.
It's the help,
marginalized, or the postman or whatever. But these guys, this was a post World War I era where people had been, maybe not these individuals who.
I was going to say all these dudes dodged the draft. They didn't see the horrors of World War I.
But the zeitgeist was full of people who had, wasn't it? So it was like
basket cases.
And to speak to Galliani, who was a guy that all these people were following, he was definitely sort of radicalized further, but that whole movement was the labor movement in general was radicalized by the horrors of World War One, and the fact that the Wall Street benefited greatly from it, while everybody else got blown to pieces and all the money fucked off. You know, like people who've been away in France for 2 years, hadn't earned any, had to leave their jobs behind them, and they came back to absolutely fuck all. And meanwhile, the beginnings of the military-industrial complex was saying how nice the cigars were.
World War One is such a funny war because, I mean, as much as I'm a fan of Battlefield One, it's a great game. Like, there's no.
I love the female black soldiers. It really sells it for me.
Well, there's just one in the desert campaign. Yep, you're playing as like a female. That's kind of cool.
I would love that.
No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the when you play in multiplayer, and it just randomly generates your character as being a lady, and it's like, I'm sorry. Yeah. But I'm having a little issue here. But you were saying, sorry to interrupt you.
Well, it's just such a funny war because it's like, I guess what happened was all these nations were allied with different treaties, so they all got kind of dragged into war. But there was a lot of sort of like pro-war propaganda, and there were a lot of people who wanted to paint these leftists as extremists, as like unpatriotic for not supporting.
That was a big part of the prosecution's argument in the thing when they had Sacco and Vanzetti on the stand. The prosecutor, by the way, Jew, his name was Katzman. He was saying, "Where were you when we were fighting the Hun?" Yeah. And they had to say we were in Mexico, failing at farming.
Yeah,
and not.
Sacco and Vanzetti went to Mexico.
Yeah, I mentioned that before. They were living communally in Mexico during the American involvement in World War One.
Nice.
I mean, the outbreak of World War One is a kind of.
We just covered this on the show, actually.
Yeah, they're a big. It's a big, but it's like an overarching theme of the show.
All of our show,
developed, because like that's where all this shit really that 100 years of shit kind of started with that.
The fuse was World War
One. About the last 100 years. The last 100 years of stuff. Yeah.
I mean, we're still dealing with the fallout of it, and the forces that made it happen are still operating to make what's happening now happen. You know, they didn't really lose.
They won big time.
Were people just bored?
No, it was all about creating a one world empire, which they're pretty much done by now. So it was entirely successful from the point of view of the sort of shadowy forces behind it.
Rhodesians.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but it's been rebranded from the British Empire. It's now the American Empire, but it's still the same people and the same institutions,
same banks
behind it.
Yeah.
And it's going to be the Chinese Empire next, and it'll still be the same thing.
Right.
That's my hypothesis, anyway. But so the
that's
whole
kind of cool.
Listen, we got a lot of Iranians to kill between now and then, so you better watch yourself.
It will be fun to watch like TikTok kids get drafted when they be at war with China.
Well, they're going to be streaming. They're going to be streaming an IED.
My prediction is people are going to even 5 years ago, people were like appalled at the lack of everyday liberty in China. But my prediction is within 10 years, people are going to start moving from the West to China because it's more free than the West.
Well, ching chong, motherfucker, I'm getting a plane ticket.
I mean, they've already built the cities for us to live in.
Yeah, that fucking little mini Paris is sick.
I'm going to shave my 5 o'clock shadow so I don't get mistaken for a Muslim. And we're going to
China. Yeah. I'll be all set. The number one selling book in China is a book called Jewish Money Secrets. Fuck. Anyway, what else? Is there anything else we want to touch on about Sacco and Vanzetti? I guess I will say that Michael Dukakis kind of made a public apology in the early 90s, or late 80s, sorry, to Sacco and Vanzetti and their descendants. But as I mentioned before, the Constitution of Massachusetts does not allow the governor to, pardon people. That's not part of it. So that was largely symbolic, but we actually just passed 100 years exactly, just a few months ago, in August, of the actual robbery. And another thing is, it's so crazy. There's so many connections to my life with this fucking this story. The place where the factory was, where the robbery took place, is the place that the MBTA station that I get on every day.
Right.
So fucking crazy, man.
It would have been better if you had fingered a girl in the car park.
Yeah. Would have been cool if I blew up some bankers. Anyway, before I incriminate myself further, Mike, what would you like to plug on the show, my friend?
Check out my podcast, The Sit Down. We do it every Wednesday. There's actually an episode out. I don't know when this comes out, but put an episode out tonight. Okay, cool. So yeah, I do a podcast, The Sit Down. It used to be about organized crime and history, but we kind of branched out, and now we talk about anything. And follow me on Instagram, Recine.Mike.
Cool. So you can listen to the audio version of our show at www.historyhomos.com. You can follow us across social media on Twitter and Instagram at historyhomospod. Please check out our YouTube channel and subscribe by either searching History Homos on YouTube or by clicking the link in any of our social media bios. Speaking of which, you can follow me on Instagram at Scott Lizard Abrams. And you can watch me stream games that shouldn't be streamed because it's mostly text at twitch.tv/historyhomos. And for any sticker requests, I have a few more stickers left. Get at me and I'll send them out to you. And then after that, I'm going to have to start charging. I'm sorry, no more freebies. But historyhomos@gmail.com to hit me up with that. And any questions, comments, or concerns, please hit me up there. So, Viva Anarchia. William, what would you like to leave the ladies and gentlemen with tonight?
Fight the paw.
Later, homos. And we're out on the audio video now.
Sweet.
Bye-bye.